Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello, and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I'm Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Great.
All
Looks
right.
like we've got some hype in chat, which is nice.
We do. Oh, we do. Yeah.
Hype.
So it's another Sunday. How was everybody's week? Diggs is
Good. All right.
You've been playing. What's it called? Disney.
Disney Dreamlight
Yeah.
Valley. Mm-hmm.
I saw you on there. Is it fun?
Yeah, it's directed. It's a good theme box. It's a nice theme box, but I've got a 7-year-old friend that I play games with in Colorado, so it's not multiplayer yet, but it's kind of fun to, you have a 7-year-old friend. It's cool to be taking pictures with Mickey and Scrooge and Goofy. And the great thing is I'm able to make a character who looks like Diggs. So that's good for diversity in Disney, which has been a topic in social media for the past couple of weeks.
Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
Neuro?
Yep. Some amount of gaming, some amount of kind of working on learning Unreal 4, making little side project sort of stuff, and what I got those COVID and flu shot yesterday, so yeah, fun.
Oh, both together. I did that.
Yeah.
One in each arm.
Yep. But they don't
fun.
really affect me. It's just like no big deal.
Don't get that swarm.
Nope, not really.
I today was about 6:30. Started to download New World. It was about a 14 gig download, so I did not get to play it yet. But I don't know. They're hyping something on their PTR. I think the next patch. It's weird hyping a PTR. I don't know. It's just strange because there's group, and I'm now blanking on who the streamers were that are gonna play as a group. Two, I don't believe play it regularly. So New World is still trying to kick it, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah, it's so they have new cultures, Egypt and Rome, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
is that a whole new world though, or not?
I think it's a new starting. They're doing new starting zone and all kinds of stuff.
So the reason I say it's weird to hype PTR, and I see the thing in chat about Alpha 2, I feel like they're different. Like, New World's been out for a while, so it just seems weird to hype your PTR when you've been out for a year versus an Alpha 2, right? I just think there's some inherent differences, but yeah, I'll be all about Alpha 2 when we get there. Whenever that might be. I had a weird dream that it like spontaneously was given to us. I don't know, man. I've been dreaming a lot. I usually don't remember dreams, but I've been tinkering with my sleep. So it was weird. I won't go into that, but
this is pretty much like a DLC, right? It's like a little mini expansion because it's new starting area stuff and new cultures. I mean, that's a pretty significant thing to hype, I would think. There's new weapons, I think, too. So I think there's enough to hype. It doesn't have to be a super huge expansion to be hyped about new content.
I'm not saying that. Just the PTR. It's weird. Well, we can talk. So what's your experience been then with? Do you do much PTRs?
I normally don't jump onto PTRs, but I kind of follow what's on there. I don't necessarily play them myself, but I follow other people, so I know what's coming up. But again, it's pretty much like a expansion. I mean, I don't know that it matters whether it's on a PTR. The reason not to do the PTR is so that you don't get burned out playing the PTR before you play it for real.
Well, I'm ready to get on, try to learn some musical instruments, maybe get a random, some sort of skinning perk or something that I absolutely won't need for an instrument. I actually have no idea how it works. I'm just making that up. But
yeah, in chat we're getting new huge zone, new players experience 1 to 25. Free. I don't know what that means because I would think it would be free for me anyway. New weapon, new Halloween event, all on the PTR. But that means if it's a new Halloween event, it's got to be coming in the next week, dropping live.
So there was a post in the forums, and that's where this title came from. Which the title is actually a song by a musician called Jamie T. You should listen to it; it's a really good song. But it was an interesting question of old school MMOs versus new school MMOs, and there were sort of three questions that it started with, which is why are old MMOs loved more and remembered than modern MMOs? I don't know that that's true. Why are new generations of MMO players dwindled so much? I also don't know that that's true. And why does it feel like you're playing doesn't it feel like you're playing an MMO anymore, but a fast food MMO? So I think there's some interesting questions.
Well, my first question is this MMO or MMORPG?
Well, I think they're referring to MMORPGs, but everyone just says MMOs because it's shorter. So, I mean, think of everything encompassing, starting with UO to now.
Well, you say everything, but
so your first three, what? UO, Meridian, and EverQuest were probably the first three.
People think of New World as an MMO RPG, but it's not. And people think of even Crowfall as an MMO RPG, and it's not. So when they say dwindling MMOs, I'm not exactly sure what they mean. But let's go with the first question. What was the first question?
It was just everything went crazy. Why are old MMOs loved more than and remembered more than modern MMOs? So this is the nostalgia question.
Depends who you're asking. Are you asking people in their 20s or are you asking people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s? People will also say they like the music from their childhood, but I guess I'm still a little hung up on, like, they don't actually define what's an old school or a new MMO at all, do they?
No, but I
So,
well, they do. I guess mentions Lineage, Ragnarok, DAOC, RuneScape, WoW, which is interesting when I see WoW thrown into that, and I don't see EverQuest in there. I think that says something probably about the poster.
exactly. And so it's something where, yeah, we can definitely talk about these questions as like interesting talking points, but it's a little bit difficult to give an objective answer when we don't even have a clear definition to begin with. And the list that was provided appears doesn't even, have all the entries and stuff that one would expect on it. I don't know where one would draw the line. What is a new MMO versus an old school MMO? Like, really, what?
For our purposes, we'll say World of Warcraft. That's your cutoff because that still exists.
But I can talk about some stuff because, for instance, back in the day, who was it that played? And I think Neuro, you said you were one of them, but I don't think it was some duo. Back in 2014, 2015, 2014, I think they decided to play, and it might have been Lock 6 time. They decided to play vanilla EQ, for the first time, and they were like, what people enjoyed this? Why did people enjoy this? And we enjoyed it at the time because with EQ specifically, as opposed to Ultima Online, Ultima Online was a down perspective, right? It was
For isometric, yeah.
isometric, yeah. And so the super appeal about EQ was it's the closest to playing in a 3D virtual world of D&D that you could get. So it was just fun being able to run around in a world and have hobbits and, I mean, halflings
Well, to have it be an MMO, because otherwise, like the Might and Magic series pretty much had been doing that the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, with other players. And what I mean is by the D&D experience. So the cool thing was you could play with other players anytime you wanted to, as opposed to, as Neuro is still trying to do and doing a pretty good job of it, but sometimes there's delays of hoping that you have 5 people who have the time to do a game with you each weekend. In person, it was almost impossible to get everybody together every weekend or more than once a month. So being able to have basically a D&D game up 24/7 where you could run around and mostly do what you wanted was awesome. And the funny thing about in 2014, when I was watching people play vanilla EQ, I was like, oh, I thought it looked closer to WoW, to World of Warcraft. I'd forgotten how clunky it looked back in the day because like it basically looked like Doom to me. But when I played EQ, the graphics seemed like cutting edge. Well, not cutting edge, and not even as cutting edge as EverQuest 2 might have been. So that's kind of the nostalgia, is just being able to play whenever you wanted to. That was the awesome part, having quests and just exploring worlds. And who cared that you had to wait 30 seconds to zone into a new zone, to load into a new zone? Who cared? Like, you're still getting to have fun. I think for me, the big cutoff was one, for some reason, after playing now I'm forgetting the name of the expansion. What was the one with the WoW expansion with Mount Hegel burning
Crusade?
Yeah, maybe the Burning Crusade. After that, it was right before Pandaria. I had I pre-purchased Pandaria, but I never played it because I was burnt out. EverQuest should be an EverQuest. I expect that for World of Warcraft 2, and it's not an EverQuest because by 2013 you could race to max level in a few weeks, maybe a month at the most, and then you got to wait 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years for an expansion. That's not an EverQuest, and I'm kind of done with that treadmill. I ended up playing Neverwinter Online. I played the beta, and then once I got to max level in launch, and just before, I think I played a little bit of the expansion probably on the PTR, basically. And then once that released, I was like, yeah, nah, I don't need to play it anymore because I'm going to get to max level and then I got to wait for who knows how long. And then I heard about EverQuest Next. And what I'm hoping will happen with EverQuest Next, well, not EverQuest Next, but the concept of building the cities and the cities possibly being destroyed and having to have those maintained. I'm hoping that will have us basically feel like we always have something we want to do that's not just a repetitive raid or repetitive dungeons. I play mmorpgs because I want to live in a world that simulates book trilogies and all that. And I want to be there for a while, and I don't want to have to keep reading the last chapter of the book while I'm waiting for the next book to come out. So I'm hoping that, or I was hoping anyway, even if I don't play it, if they can achieve it, it will be a great look forward to the future of having games that we can play perpetually, and have new content coming in constantly. That's what I'm looking for. So I think that's the big thing, is just getting burnt out on the same old formula. It's been around for 20 years, over 20 years now. 25 years. 97?
Yeah.
94.
I mean, I guess for me, the kind of cutoff is what we would hope to be a meow, but we ain't got one yet. So, it's hard to really say.
A meow is what? We know what it is.
Multiplayer evolving online world.
Yeah. Something that's perpetually moving. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. And I had been saying, so by the time of 2013, I think, so after I finished playing Neverwinter Online 2013, I was like, I think I'm done with MMORPGs for a while. World of Warcraft needs to stop doing expansions. They need to do some form of World of Warcraft 2.0. And just after I thought that, the next weekend I ran into the reveal of EverQuest Next. And I was like, wow, this is what I'm asking for. Not just a bunch of expansions, but a new generation that's doing something different.
Well, we'll see. So this to me was this nostalgia question, right? And there's parts that make up nostalgia. Neuro, do you have it? Do you look back like fondly of old games? Like, do you compare things, or are you pretty immune to that process?
Oh no, I definitely think PlanetSide 1 did things right and PlanetSide 2 did things wrong. And there's a lot of people who had worked on it that feel the same way. And some other people that worked on it, I believe more on the production side, that weren't as into what the rest of the team kind of saw and made the executive decision to completely change the direction and ruin all the best parts of it. So
yeah,
that happened, but it's a hard one to really like compare that to other games, because there is only one PlanetSide 1, there is only one PlanetSide 2. There aren't like games upon games done in that style. The next closest game I can think of that really scratches that like persistent open world battlefield sort of itch is Foxhole, and I've played it a few times here and there. Not a first person shooter, but it has some similar sort of feeling elements to it. It's like very satisfying in similar ways.
PlanetSide 2 is an MMO FPS.
Yes. 1 and 2.
Yeah, so that's why I distinguished between RPG and FPS.
This is really a nostalgia question.
Well, no. I'm going to say you're doing more role playing in PlanetSide 1 and 2 than you are in EverQuest or WoW. Probably WoW in particular, that you actually have a role. You are role playing a squad leader. You are role playing, a commander that's in charge of an operation. That is the role you are playing. Now, whether you're doing it in character or not, well, that's up to you. But it's
but it's an FPS.
Yes, but you are playing a role in
MMO,
that
FPS RPG.
It's an FPS with some RPG elements.
I'm just
you level up.
It's just interesting how you mentioned PlanetSide 1 to 2, because there's sort of three keys to nostalgia when this starts to come up that I think about when I see questions like this. One is it tends to be formed. Our memories, those sort of nostalgia related memories, tend to be formed at a period of time when we are sort of finding ourselves. So most of the time that's around 18, 19, 20 years old. So interestingly for me, now for some people, MMOs didn't exist at that age, so you kind of have to take it a little bit different with this specific topic. But for me, EverQuest was 18, 19 years old. So that sort of fits. Also, we tend to think of and nostalgia really kicks in when we have sort of high emotion, so sadness or anger. So if you're playing a new game and you're getting frustrated by it, it sort of sparks a past memory as a way to sort of make you feel better about yourself because you were good at something, right? You have something that you were fond of, you did well in. And then the other third part that I think is important to remember is we often remember the positive things and forget all the negative things. So here I am consciously saying, wow, I really missed, this was a recent, I think it was Ashes of Creation Twitter post about a game. I don't remember, but the answer I gave them was EverQuest. And it's like, but as I'm typing this out, I'm like, yeah, but there were elements of that really sucked. But I don't remember those things. You remember the fun aspects of it. So
Oh, no, I remember the stuff that sucked about PlanetSide 1 for sure. It didn't have hitboxes. I think the direction you hit someone was the only part that mattered, except BFRs. BFRs were supposed to be special, but they screwed up the deployment of them and then went the wrong way with design on them. So, that could get worked out, but whatever. And other than that, like the design of the levels, the design of the world was pretty good. The way everything functioned together, having more variants of each of the sort of weapons that you use for a little bit of a different feel or a little bit of different specificity. I could see that being something that, they could have used more of those elements and focused on that when they went from PlanetSide 1 to PlanetSide 2 and still kept it more of this, you don't have a class, it's what you're good at and what armor you've picked and what loadout you've picked with the things that you're good at and what sort of vehicles you can pilot. And that's really what it came down to. You could switch your loadout as you needed to. You were never really locked into anything, but anybody at any level was dangerous on the battlefield in PlanetSide 1. I think that was one of the things that's one of the things you don't really see in MMORPGs, if they have level scaling sort of things, is since you're using the same equipment and you have the same armor and health and everything as the other players in PlanetSide 1, you just start the game, you can take down a max level player that you got from behind and got the drop on pretty easily. There is nothing special about them being more experienced that is going to allow them to survive for some reason. But anyway, kind of got off on a rant there. Other than that, like, there are definitely things I did like about a lot of MMOs. I still feel like the progression system in Vanguard was one of the best. You could do diplomacy, you could do crafting, or you could be, the standard murder hobo. Likewise, there was a lot to like about Star Wars Galaxies. I like that you had to engage in, like, relaxing to actually fully heal and refill your attributes to the max after having gone out and done combat for a while. But even more than that, the crafting system, the randomized minerals and components that you could make with them, the fact that the best top-notch crafters in the game not only had stockpiles of really high-quality materials, but they also juiced their characters up as high as possible with gear to max out their weapon crafting or armor crafting or whatever it was. And that, that's the sort of stuff that I felt like was pretty revolutionary to see in an MMO, and that no game of that scale has gotten close to doing something like that ever since. No one's even tried doing anything close to that ever since.
In the chat, we have Terradin is saying that rose-colored glasses. She tried playing classic EverQuest, and nah. Theater Elf was the same with Dark Age of Camelot.
Wow, classic.
classic EQ. But yeah, yeah. I mean,
Well, yeah, I think that's the answer to that first question. The second one as to why have the new generations of players dwindled so much? I don't think they have. If anything, I think you probably have more now than you certainly did during the old school days. They're just spread out across different games. They're still there. You're just not seeing server totals because nobody puts those numbers out. So,
well, but I think we're not really playing anything regularly. I don't think, are we? We
us,
dabble with
no.
a bunch of different stuff, and I think that's pretty typical. I think most people are waiting for the next thing that's really going to grab their attention for more than a year or so, or maybe even 6 months.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for.
It seems like all the latest stuff is because I think we're all waiting for that great new thing, and that new thing has not appeared. It's all of the new stuff is too close to this EQ and World of Warcraft that we're kind of tired of playing. So I think for me, the next possibility that's going to grab me is something where we have to build up our cities and defend them. Because I have a feeling that I would be invested in the city that I built, and that might not remain the same if I don't participate in keeping all the stuff that I think is great about that city. If that stuff can be destroyed, I think that's going to have me more invested, especially if I invest time making it a certain way. That's what really interested me about EQ Next, and that's one of the things that has me interested in that's the primary feature and system that I want to see how well that's going to work with Ashes of Creation, regardless of whether I actually play it, because I want that to be the future of MMORPGs.
I hear a little bit moving towards or back of playing Ashes.
No, I have to reframe my wording, since there's a very good chance I won't be playing it.
Well, it sounds like even if you do, you're going to get targeted and be forced to quit anyways. But that's a different discussion.
I don't know if they could force me to quit. I don't know that targeting the Diggs character is something that would force me to quit.
Okay.
That's actually a feature, probably.
And even if you did log off of the Diggs character, you've got 11 other alts that you'd be playing anyway, so they wouldn't know all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but then you could start like dropping hints of names of people on the server that you don't like and making people think that they're actually one of your characters, and then they hunt that person thinking, that's a Diggs alt, we're gonna get them.
That's already happening on the forums. People are getting accused of being a Diggs alt, like, frequently at this point. Oh, you liked Diggs's post. You must be an alt. You've only been on the forums for 3 days. Oh, wait. You've been on there for 2 years. You're a long-standing Diggs alt. I mean, and the people who are getting accused are like, are you kidding me? As much as I disagree with Diggs, why would I be Diggs? It's hysterical to watch. So yes, that's going to happen.
Because of course you disagree with Diggs on other posts to disagree with Diggs on this post.
Mm-hmm. So,
well,
yeah, it's pretty fun.
I love that idea. I would love to see that happen. So we probably shouldn't talk about it.
I think killing Diggs is a service. It's okay.
So kind of talking about old school things, and another forum thread that had been posted was, I would like to see a revival of support classes. I'm assuming, things traditional sort of bard class, enchanter class. Did either of you regularly play anything like that kind of early on?
I would say in Planet Side and in WoW. That was a big part of my focus. I played a shaman in WoW, and even though I was an absolute one-man wrecking machine, yeah, as a support role, very very effective, getting the totems and stuff down, creating areas for ally support and areas of denial to put enemies in a bad place, that sort of stuff for sure. So that, and then Planet Side 1, the more you play, the more you just kind of become a little bit of everything, because it's boring to just dump all of the points in one thing. And eventually you're going to have more points than you can just dump in one sort of thing anyway. So, have a couple of vehicles, have my my heavy spec so I can get the tanks, maybe have one aircraft of some kind. Advanced hacking so I can get the doors open quicker and hack all the different stuff, steal enemy vehicles. Oh man, that was the thing, stealing enemy vehicles with advanced hacking. They would never see it coming. They, for some reason, when you fight a faction with their own vehicles, they just go like and freeze up, and easy pickings, get back towards friendly lines. And then the only other problem is going to be getting more ammo for it. So you got to hack another vehicle of the same type and grab the ammo out, or do a little ammo exchange with your buddies on the other side, because those sort of little black market deals did exist. Fun stuff. So that was, but with that advanced tech, I would always have engineer, medic. It was very helpful that you could switch on a dime. You go with the guns out. Okay, we cleared this encounter. 4 people are down. Everybody switch to medic and revive them. Engineer, repair them up. All right, move on to the next one. You just keep a good squad going like that. So yeah, support role.
Yeah, one of my main I started off, I guess, as a druid in EverQuest, which would be probably more healer, but it also had some support to it. Although admittedly, I think that was more so because there's was quite a bit of, it was really the only class that you could solo fairly easy with. But I spent most of my later EverQuest time with as an enchanter. So I actually missed that sort of role of not having to be the one in combat or healing, but instead managing things like buffs, debuffs, CCs. The whole process was, I think, much more fun when you had very specific roles. I would hope we will see a return of roles like that for, if we're having an 8-person group. I would hope that's not just 8 people that roughly do the same thing, and that you have meaningful choices in who's in your group.
It's the sort of thing where I'm hoping that everybody's got the capacity to kind of specialize into whatever sort of category they really want, regardless of the class. Not saying that they're going to do it the same way. It should, in many ways, be a little too extremely different than the other ways other people would do it. But being a tank, I feel like there's no reason why anybody can't be a tank. You're going to be doing the same thing. Slap on the equipment for the type of damage you're going to be taking. Have your gear and stuff specified towards defensive and stay alive attributes, and have things that help you grab aggro and maintain aggro, and probably protect yourself, maybe protect people around you. I would imagine every class is going to have some version of that they can spec into, either using primary class abilities or some combination of primary and subclass to get like the right flavor on the abilities they have to do the sort of role that they want. So I think that's actually going to be a little bit more of what we're going to see. Sure, there's going to be some people that you expect them to be filling that specific sort of role, but I think we're also going to see, your plate armor wizard that's going in there and mixing it up in close range with the fighters, and that has their spells maybe the secondary class or some other set of augments makes it like return damage dealt sort of support aura or some other sort of thing that they're able to put down, that they're mixing it up with the close quarters people, and as they hack away at the enemies, they're constantly healing and regenerating. That's the sort of thing I could definitely see them having. So I feel like it's not necessarily and even I'm going to go back to another example here. D&D. I've got a wizard. Is an evocation wizard, which is the ones that do all the big fireballs and all the nuky stuff. I would very much consider him a support character. He has a whole ton of rituals that do a whole lot of different utility things, helps out in a lot of different ways, as well as just because he specialized in one thing, still has access to plenty of non-combat sort of spells, or non-damage sort of spells, I should say, that have plenty of other utility. So yes, Sheridan, yes, he is definitely a primary DPS, and because of that 20 Constitution, it's also like a side tank. But I feel like just as much of that, he has very, very much the support capacities. But that's the thing. Is like, where do you draw the line? Like, if somebody is all and only attacks and attack power, and that's all they ever do, it kind of becomes like a boring and one-sided character. And I think of it in like basketball. If somebody's able to shoot threes and just shoot the lights out, but they're absolutely porous on defense, that anytime somebody is being defended by them, that person's just going to get a clean shot. That's, you gotta have a little bit of the diversity. I feel like that's why the idea of somebody who's all support, that most of what you're doing is healing and buffing and that sort of stuff. You're not really doing much attack. I feel like that's a viable way to play, but I feel like a lot of the classes will likely have ways to do things like that, and be a less like frontline and constantly in auto attack mode sort of role.
Is the healing, are healers support?
Yeah.
Everybody's,
I mean, all damage mitigation is support.
So when
everybody's support.
When I think of support, so when I see this question, what I think of, again, back in sort of EverQuest days when you really did have a delineation. I guess you did early EverQuest 2, early WoW as well, and then things sort of became more homogenized so that everybody could kind of solo easier. I think of sitting playing an Enchanter, Plains, out of Plains of Power expansion, and I'm sitting there resting while everyone else is in combat, and my job is tracking timers of the CC, tracking the buffs, the debuffs, reapplying things as I need to reapply them. If there's an ad, I take care of it. That's sort of how I see that form of a support character, or the traditional sort of EverQuest bard, which I think of tune twisting, right? Where you're sort of starting, stopping 3 different songs in order to sort of either heal. I guess I just answered my own question, but whatever support you were sort of adding. That's the when I think of this question, I think of a class that really is not in the combatant role. They're not taking swings. They're not necessarily casting damage type spells either. That's what I think of when I hear support, which is one-sided, but I think, it helps give you a role if you enjoy that role. Part of when you look at sort of modern group finders, what are the 2 hardest things to find? Tanks and healers. Like everybody else just does the same old stuff. It's because we've sort of gotten away from specific support classes.
I would say that the problem is that gamers are thinking about combat rather than the classes themselves. So again, I play RPGs because I want to recreate the characters and character types that I read in novels. And in novels, people are not asking for tanks and healers and DPS to join a group or to go on a quest. They're asking for wizards, mages, fighters, warriors, druids, rangers, um, illusionists, bards. So I'm more focused on what is the class rather than the combat role. And I mean, that's
But
mostly the way you think of it in D&D. I mean, it's really fighter, mage, cleric, or some form of healer, and someone who has skills, possibly a rogue. You want, especially in the early days, you wanted somebody who's going to be disarming traps. So, you know, you can kind of play around with that, but it's not so much, you know, tank that you're looking for. It's not so much burst damage. You're specifically looking for mage, cleric. Probably you're going to have a fighter. And then probably you're also going to have, at the very least, a rogue. That's going to be your minimum 4. And that's the way I think of it for EverQuest as well. I want to be playing a druid, and that was the fun. I played a druid to start off with too. I loved the healing aspects, but I also loved just giving anybody who needed it Spirit of the Wolf. I think we're all supposed to be supporting each other. But gamers are focused on the efficacy of combat specifically, and that's why we have this obsession with DPS, which is not really a thing in tabletop RPGs. You know, there are combat strategies, but even for me, often I will play a bard or a rogue because I want to skill my way, diplomacy my way out of combat. Yeah, I wish I would have played Vanguard. I don't think I didn't hear about Vanguard until it was about to be sunset. So I think everybody should be support. And hopefully one of the things that I'm hoping will be similar to EverQuest 2, but even broadened for Ashes of Creation, is that we'll be synergizing off of each other's abilities. So it won't just be, oh, I have to be a tank, I'm blah, 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 blah. Oh, DPS, I got to focus on DPS. Hopefully everybody will be focused on how they can synergize the abilities they have with everybody else in their group.
I'll also say with support classes, you know, the other thing I think that was different in the old school sort of way is you also didn't really overlap too much. So yes, you could maybe be like a cleric could heal, but they also provided support buffs that no one else really did, or a druid would heal, but then their support buffs were different from a cleric support buffs. And I feel like a lot of times you get a lot of overlap. And I think there's certain classes within WoW, for example, if there's a buff from one of the classes, another class can't buff because they overlap in what they do.
But yeah, I mean, I want to play an enchanter because I like being an enchanter, not because I'm trying to be support, not because I care about DPS, or not even because I care about tanking. It's because I'm an enchanter and I do what enchanters do. And that's probably going to be some debuffs.
And Terradin mentions the Holy Trinity. That's the one thing that was a big deal within EverQuest Next, because I linked that. I think actually was it our last episode or 2 episodes ago. Like there was an article wrote about that. It was related to the tank question. I feel like we should find a way to get away from Holy Trinity as well. You know, make mobs smart enough that it's sort of a different process. But anyways.
Yeah, it Holy Trinity. I can understand from a design and people being able to understand gameplay perspective why it's done, why it's been done, why you might want to continue doing it to some extent. I I like the idea of like more the feeling of a forward line and a back line, and potentially being flanked, that you've got your fighters forward, you've got your rangers and casters further back, and you're doing different things at different ranges, keeping your eye on different things. That said, there's nothing to stop things from being done at different ranges, that you've got your healers up front. Again, the idea that I said earlier about the life drain aura sort of thing, that so long as you're pounding on the enemies, you're getting health back. Or other sorts of means of healing that are done from the front line in the heat of combat instead of a little bit further back. And likewise, an example that I think I've brought up in the past, either here or in a text form, having casters using some sort of spell that's got like a real aggro grab sort of function to it, and having them just kind of form in a circle around the big enemy and just keep shooting from different angles to draw it in different directions, trying to, instead of sit there and take the damage, instead keep the enemy so frustrated that it can't really settle on a target. And so you're able to attack it kind of freely as a result. So, that's the sort of stuff that I'm hoping will exist to break the Trinity or break the reliance on the Trinity. And it's going to require some, good and careful design choices to do that, and to make sure they don't just fall into the Holy Trinity conventional squad raid format or whatever, fighting against mobs and bosses. But they got a good team over there, so hopefully they've got something cooking up, and maybe something the Unreal Engine does, UE5 does, makes AI and that sort of stuff just that much easier. That part I don't know about. I haven't looked into it.
Well, we're getting towards our last 10 minutes. I can keep going through some of these forum posts unless there's something specific that's been on y'all's mind.
No, I'm happy to go where you go.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the subject. There was a post on Facebook going back to an older subject, talking about the spear gun things and how the hunters would use those to climb the giants and get the attacks in on them. Okay, that's cool. Like, if you can get ones that you can apply that skin to, and that's not just some aesthetic thing that is accessory item that you're just carrying, that's great. I would love to have the harpoon climby things for the big enemies. I think it would be great to have that for a lot of things. Be able to have it to fight big enemies, being able to use it to set up things for climbing. If you're trying to get up a mountainside, be able to shoot the harpoon into a softer spot and climb it on up. Being able to go across to an enemy ship, or trying to get something maybe like the size of a normal shark or something from your boat and spear it and reel it in. Yeah, there's a lot of uses I could see for something like that. I'm not going to buy a skin just for the idea of being able to do that, though. I need the damn item. So, now that it's been talked about more, I'm really hoping that is the sort of thing that we'll be seeing. I hope it's not like a class restricted thing, but everybody can use it. Perhaps some classes have other abilities that not everyone can do with them, but that's the sort of thing I've kind of been looking. It's like, the skin's cool, but I want the functional item.
Phantom, you asked why your role can't change with character growth, and that's what augments are for.
I'm just saying, as a character, I'm learning new skills. Why I see what you're saying. MMORPG. Because I think your response to me, not really keen on RPGs because of not assuming a specific role. But I don't understand why a character
specific class role.
Yeah, why can't that change from character growth? rather than
because
rolling a new character.
Because Gandalf is not a ranger and he should not become a ranger.
But could he if he tried?
Gandalf should not become a thief. Same reason why, Superman should not become Batman. Batman should not become Aquaman.
Well, they couldn't. They don't share the same powers, and that's not a learned process.
They could.
I could learn to shoot a bow. I could learn to shoot a bow.
You could write it if you wanted to.
I could learn to cast a spell.
Now that's the thing. Everybody can learn to shoot a bow. I don't know that everyone can learn to cast a spell.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
I don't know what the in-game mechanisms are for casting a spell. If it's something that's innate, if it's academic and requires study, and then yes, anybody can cast a spell that way. If it's like you got to have spellcaster blood in the family, like that one wacky book series with the wands. Not everyone necessarily. You might be able to, theoretically come to all the parts of how you would cast a spell, but then you just can't channel the energy because you don't have the what force for it.
Yeah, but essence specific to ashes flows through all of us. So, I would think theoretically, if you learn the process, that's what happened with what's his name that made the zombies.
Yeah, but theoretically, everybody's not going to be able to be Taylor Swift or Jamie T or Michael Jackson, or different people have different aptitudes, and what.
But that's a function of popularity. That's not a function of skill.
No, it's not. It is a function of skill.
Oh no, I can take you around Nashville to some of the smallest podunk bars you ever want to go to, and give you some really good music that you've never heard of before.
I bet that as much as you study, you will not be able to match me in dancing. I bet the same is true of Neuro as well. And I bet that there's stuff that you all are good at that I would not be good at, like PvP.
You give me between where I'm at now and how, where you're at your age. And if that was the only thing I committed to my life to, yeah, maybe. But that would be like a one-track sort of dedicated thing. And I don't, even then, I don't know that I ever actually get that good. I might just not have the rhythm, for example.
Yeah, I would never. I'm not, just because of who I am not going to become, this. I would not be able to play the piano at the same level that I'm able to dance, just because.
You could if you spent the amount of time you danced into that. How many years have you danced?
Because
How many years have you danced?
Since I was 1.
Well, I mean, how many years have you put in the effort to learn how to dance? We talk 20 years, 30 years?
No, literally since I was 1. I've been dancing
so
since I was 1.
if you had 30 years to learn the piano, you don't think you could become a really good piano player?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm not saying it should be easy. I'm just saying we have that capability. We limit ourselves based off time and availability.
Interest in all kinds of stuff. Like I'm not going to be as great a basketball player as I am a dancer. I'm not going to be as great as a football player as I am an actor.
Now, I'm gonna say, because a lot of other things can be used by whomever, however they want. I feel like the classes are something that, not that they could just get rid of and should get rid of, but the game could have been designed without classes and done in a different way, and people would probably still fall into class-like roles and configurations.
Well, yeah. No, that would happen.
So I guess instead of having it everybody can do anything, but and you can pick your own builds or whatever, and it's just going to be the Wild West. They want to at least have that a bit of the curation of having different classes and some different expectations of what they would and could be able to do.
I mean, you're right. Everyone would fall into a certain category. I mean, that's just natural. That's how your playstyle is. My thing is, why does that mean next year, as I'm playing that same character, I can't decide to go a different path? I'm not saying that should be an easy path. To use Dig's example, I'm not saying I should be able to spend 2 weeks and learn how to dance. If I want to become proficient as I've been with everything else I've already done, then I need to put in the same amount of time or more. I feel like that's a better alternative than just alts, an altaholic.
It's funny now that I think about it. For D&D, your character has spent their entire life leading up to starting level 1, 0 experience at the beginning of the campaign. And you kill 15 goblins or something like that. And all of a sudden, you have accrued enough experience that you can become as powerful in some other discipline as the thing you spent your entire life building up to do. And multi-class, like the idea that you spent 40 years of your human life becoming a druid or whatever, and then you go out and you conk 20 rats on the head, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm a fighter now. I'm gonna wield this quarterstaff like a two-handed sword, like that Musashi guy.
Yeah, I mean, D&D offers that. You have multi-classing in D&D. Again, we have some of that availability in Ashes of Creation. You can't change your primary archetype, but you can change your secondary archetype. And again, you have augments, a variety of different augments to help you dabble in other stuff. But RPGs are typically going down the path of people being exceptional at their roles, not just mundane jack of all trades, master of none. So it's that you have a specific aptitude for a role that you're skilled at and interested in and have gained the discipline and experience in. And you are exceptional. RPGs are typically not life sims where you're just a regular Joe out there doing your stuff. Although I was going to say, I do like to kind of play D&D that way, and if I can, RPGs that way. So I'm really just a gardener who happens to, because I do a lot of gardening, knows a lot about herbs and can become a druid and, dabble in some clerical stuff, some healing stuff. But primarily, I'm really a gardener, and that's what I'm trying to be. It's just some of those skills, because I have the aptitude for it, kind of move me into.
You can learn to become a really good gardener.
Well, I'm a gardener who just happens to also be a damn good druid, or maybe a damn good cleric.
I started a garden 5 years ago with no skill whatsoever, and I've grown about everything I can think of.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how well you match against other farmers. Yeah.
I didn't say I'm a farmer.
Okay.
Gardener. I have no interest, at least yet, of going out to 100 acres and plowing and seeding. We have someone that does that around here that rents land, and it looks like the most boring thing I could ever think of doing. The corn's still up; it's dry as hell. I assume it's for ethanol, but
it's just the wrong perspective. It's boring unless you're playing the simulator version and you've played it and mastered it. And now you want to do the real thing, and then it's interesting. Like.
But that's actually part of what's built in from the RPG side, is that you don't excel. It's when there's reasons I don't excel at sports. I'm non-competitive, so I don't have a drive to do that. And it's kind of the same thing with farming. So you have the kind of mindset where you are happy to dabble But you don't want to be a professional gardener.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I like to tasks. I like to learn. My son's birthday party's next week. I had an idea. They're doing a Nerf gun fight, and I thought of this. He loves Minecraft. I'll get some plywood, create a creeper, pixel art, hang the guns from that. So went, cut up a bunch of plywood, got the saws out, got this, and it looks pretty damn good. First time I ever did it. Challenged myself.
That's why you have an artisan path, and there's all. That's why there's religions also that you could dabble in Ashes of Creation. You don't just have to be a farmer or just have to be whatever your primary archetype is going to be. You could also dabble in religions if you wanted to, or social organizations. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Or destroy the religions.
Ashes of Creation. I don't know if we can just destroy them.
I know they're not going to let us, but any way we can get to sort of disrupt them, I should say.
Yes.
Destroy them with logic.
No.
That destroy them with logic doesn't work in a game universe where the gods are actually material and tangible, because then it's not fake. The gods are actually out there.
Yeah.
Well, and we have the because magic emote that specifically refutes logic. So that's why we're allowed to have hair growing out of the middle of bones that apparently does not disintegrate upon death.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? I just thought of something. If that hair is still so good, so structurally sound that it's attached to a completely decayed dwarf, why are they not making items out of it? Like that seems like perfect use. Like it would be either bowstring or something.
Well, I'd imagine they took. I would imagine they took all of the skin off that they could, and then used preservatives and stuff to keep the beards in shape. But also, they haven't actually fought any real fights with anything. They're big, they're tough, they're maybe trained, but they haven't fought anything in a long time because, dwarves have been away for millennia. So all of that's just for show.
And suddenly the concept of maybe the hair hurts to cut it, and I'm thinking of a live hair, it kind of freaks me out, like bleeding from the hair or something. That'd just be kind of...
no, it would be something that doesn't have pain receptors in the nerves. It would continue growing and have all of the sort of sensory faculties.
If it's alive, it would make no sense to not have pain. That's how you know something's wrong. Like
your brain doesn't have pain receptors.
There are other ways to experience things. There's transport pain.
Yeah, but
you're right. You can go into the skull and poke around the brain. You don't feel it, but you've had multiple other layers that you have gone through that contain pain sensory information before you get to the brain. So,
that's true.
God, now we're back onto these beards. So,
well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up.
All right. I think Steven announced in 2-ish weeks we'll have another live stream. I don't actually know when that puts us. That would be September, probably 30th, I guess. I don't think they've announced the date specifically.
I've been doing them on the later side, though.
Yeah, and I don't believe we will be here next week because Diggs, you're not available, correct?
It's my birthday in DC, so
no.
Technically, I might be. I don't know what people have planned for me, but technically, it's possible.
Well, if it's your birthday, we are not going to hold you to remote in for this show. So, yes, as everyone says, happy birthday, Diggs. And so I guess plan on us being here in 2 weeks, which would actually put us in perfect timing with the next stream. So until then, everyone, have a great time.
See you later.